My name is Julia French, and I will be playing factory worker Dina Lishvitz and defense lawyer Max Stewart.
My name is Brittany Boyd, and I will be playing young Eva Harris.
My name is Brianna Boyd, and I am playing old Eva Harris.
My name is Natasha Savage, and I'll be playing factory worker Bessie Viviano and Judge Thomas Crane.
My name is Ann Washta, and I will be playing the interviewer.
The title of our project is The Triangle Shirtwaist Factory Fire Turns New York into one of the most progressive in terms of labor reform.
We all have heard of the tragedy that happened on March 25, 1911. Now, 25 years later, we have a survivor of the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory Fire here to tell us her story of survival. We have Eva Harris, a former seamstress at the factory located on floors 8 through 10 of the Ash Building in New York City. She was working on the 8th floor that tragic day when fire broke out in the factory. Thank you, Eva, for joining us today.
It was a difficult time, but I'm glad to finally be sharing my story.
So, Eva, I'm ever so curious. What was your everyday life like working at the factory?
Well, I was a seamstress on the 8th floor. My job was to sew the fabric for the shirts that our factory is so famous for. The floor that I worked on was dirty and loud. There was a constant noise of sewing machines, flow of fabric scraps everywhere, and dirt that covered every square inch. I remember always going home with a dirty face and hands because of all the work they had us do. I never recall seeing a happy face during the workday. The sweat that fell from our bodies was almost as if our lives were slowly being pulled away from us.
Now, what were the normal working hours at the factory?
Well, we worked 14 hours at most a day and got an hour and a half for lunch and supper. During those 14 hours, we managed to produce 2,000 shirts at the factory.
What was it like the day of the fire, before the fire actually occurred?
Well, as you could imagine, it was just an ordinary day. No one could see this coming, not even in a million years. When I spied the fire in the waste bin, I alerted the rest of the factory. Everyone was in an uproar.
I can imagine. Now, if it's not too difficult for you, can you please describe for us what it was like when you first found that there was a fire at the factory?
I closed my eyes and froze for a minute and thought to myself, I'm going to die today. I couldn't believe it was actually happening. I thought that the day of the fire was God's end for me, but sadly the end for so many.
Mr. Bernstein, it's a fire! 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 Get to the elevators!
Elevator floor 10! Floor 10, there's a fire on floor 8. Get me through to floor 9. Floor 9? I can't get anyone! I can't get anyone!
The elevators are full! Fire! Spreading quickly into the fire escapes!
Finding a way to escape was a blessing for you. You are very fortunate to be here with us today.
Yes, I managed to get down the fire escape before it collapsed, but so many did not.
Why didn't you and the rest of the factory workers just use the doors?
Well, the doors of the factory were locked any other times than the 14-hour workday because the bosses and the owners of the factory were suspicious that girls were sneaking out for breaks or stealing during the workday.
In November of 1911, there was a trial held accusing the owners of the factory of manslaughter. Now, it is to my understanding that you had a family member playing a very big role in this trial.
Yes, that person was Isaac Harris, one of the owners, who is also my brother.
I also have knowledge that you spoke at the trial as well.
Yes, my role is to speak of the events that occurred the day of the fire. My role is to speak of the truths. My role is to speak of the horrors.
So, Ms. Harris, to your knowledge, is that exactly what happened on the day of the fire?
Yes, sir, it is.
I have no further questioning, Your Honor.
Will the defendants please rise? In the criminal case of Max Blank and Isaac Harris, the jury finds the defendants not guilty.
The results of the trial must have been very devastating for many friends and family members of the victims.
Yes, my brother and Max Blank were required to pay a $75 fine per life lost.
Do you believe that this was fair?
Was anything really fair? I mean, for the victims in this tragedy, their families had to live the rest of their lives without them. And for the people that survived, they were scarred for life.
Very tragic indeed. You have a very mournful story, but it was a pleasure to interview you today.
Thank you. Thank you for listening.
Before the Triangle Shirtwaist factory fire, the government thought it wasn't right to interfere with how businesses created their rules and how they paid their workers. However, after the fire, the government thought it was time to step in and take control of what was going on.
From 1912 to 1914, Senator Robert F. Wagner, Alfred E. Smith, and Samuel Gompers headed the Commission of New York State Legislation. They passed these bills in its preliminary reports and were later considered to be laws.
Just 1 year after the fire, it became mandatory for all facilities to run fire drills and install automatic sprinkler systems in case of a fire. Also, it is required to move all flammable rubbish to fireproof receptacles for waste material, and a law was passed to prohibit smoking in factories. Laws were created saying that women could not work within 4 weeks after childbirth, and if a child was to be employed, they needed a physical examination in advance. Prior to the fire, all doors opened inward. However, after that changed to prevent blockage to fire routes.
(1913) Penalties for violation of labor laws were put into place. The amendment to Greater New York Charter with reference to the fire was also passed. Children under the age of 14 were not allowed to work in tenement houses or cannery sheds. The maintenance of facilities became mandatory, and child labor became illegal in dangerous occupations.
(1914) Sanitation and mercantile establishments. The rooms in which they worked became cleaner, as well as the buildings. The rooms also became larger. Provisions for ventilation, drinking water, washrooms, water closets, and dressing rooms. The hour of labor of women in mercantile establishments limited to 54 to 48 hours per week in the entire state. Also, the hour of labor of children limited to 54 hours per week. Employment prohibited more than 8 hours a day or after 6 o'clock in the evening of any day.
After the New York State Legislature passed these safety laws, other states in the U.S. decided to follow in its footsteps.
From fire drills to maintenance of facilities, the Triangle Shirtwaist factory fires altered history for the better. Just picture yourself working at the age of 14, hours on end because child labor was still legal. Just picture the sweat dripping down your forehead as you worked to support your own family. Your choices were limited. You were stuck in a very dangerous environment.
Since laws have started to be passed to prevent harsh labor and fire safety, people have been safer in public workplaces and buildings.
In 1971, workplace conditions, standards, and regulations were all placed under one direction for the Occupation Safety and Health Administration.
OSHA was created to establish standards in workplaces in order to reduce injuries and fatalities on the job.
Even though many hearts were crushed and a lot of lives were lost, the Triangle Shirtwaist factory fire was a major turning point in America's labor history.